Hello and welcome to this episode of HBCU. I'm your host, Dee Brown CEO. Joining me on the show today is Christopher Walker, a graduate of Dillard University. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here today.
Man, the pleasure is all mine. I know you're zooming in from sunny New Orleans, and you're a graduate of Dillard University. So I want to just kind of take a step back in time and have you just to share with me and my viewers, how did you end up selecting Dillard University as your HBCU?
Well, you know, in New Orleans, we have actually three. We have Southern of New Orleans. We have Dillard University. We have Xavier University. And in Baton Rouge, we have Southern University of Baton Rouge, and we have Grambling in the middle of the state. And my grandmother lived down the street from Dillard University, so I grew up frequenting the area often, and I think that was the place. I mean, my dad went to Xavier University. Our friends went to Xavier. We kind of split up. Yeah. Some of us went to Xavier. Some of us went to Dillard. But I think it was the oak trees. If you ever Google the pictures of Dillard University, it's called the Avenue of the Oaks. Okay. And it's a beautiful walk to class every day.
So do you remember your freshman year, you first made it to campus? Do you remember what that was like?
You know, it was nervous. I was very nervous the first day. I mean, you with a bunch of kids from all over the city and, of course, all over the country. And It was amazing to see that Dillard University, a small school, how many people from across the country actually came to the school. And sometimes I ask, how did y'all even know about Dillard University? Right.
Right.
But no, the first day freshman was nervous. But I mean, after the first few days, it was like being with family.
So what were some of the I guess, memorable experiences you had while you were at Dillard?
Some of the most memorable experiences was, and I gotta, be honest, it's actually how I picked my career path, right? I'm a fourth generation general contractor. And when I was in school, I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. And one of the things that really got my attention was Dr. Blair economics class. And Dr. Blair at the time was dating a lady by the name of Peggy. And she had a condo on St. Charles Avenue. And, at a Dillard University, a small university, you get very personal with your professors, right? Yeah. It's not like the large universities. And Dr. Blair asked me if I was interested in renovating Miss Peggy's condo on St. Charles. And I told him absolutely. And we did it. We renovated it. It was about $100,000 renovation. Actually, the profit margin was around 20%. And at that age, 20 years old, it was very intriguing to see what kind of money you can make in the industry, right?
Right.
And I will never forget riding with my grandfather. I guess it's pivotal moments where you get other generations involved in the family business. And I remember riding with him at the 610 I-10 split. I will never forget this. Yeah. I'll never forget him looking at me and say, "Son, you realize you can make a lot of money in this business?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And I was hooked. Yeah. And but what he forgot to tell me was, you could lose a lot of money in this business. And I think that was that pivotal moment that I always remember with Dillard University, how it kind of changed my trajectory. Because I was thinking about going to law school at one time after Dillard. And at that moment is when I realized this is what I want to do. So that's one of the pivotal moments as far as memories of Dillard. But I mean, besides that, I mean, all the fun you have at HBCUs.
What are some of the signature events at Dillard that kind of make it different from the other HBCUs?
Let me say, the movie School Days. That was it, right? And Spike Lee couldn't have hit it better than what he did in School Days. And I mean, the biggest thing, we don't have a baseball team. Dillard has a baseball team now. Dillard doesn't have a football team. Dillard doesn't have a band like a Southern University, right?
Right.
So basketball was our thing. And Dillard and Xavier was the rivalries. Yeah. And that was the biggest game in town. And that was some of the big events on the campus was the Dillard Xavier rivalry games.
Do you know a guy, Jesse Connerly? I think he's the coach at Xavier, maybe.
I do not know Jesse.
He's a general contractor as well.
We don't worry about Xavier folks.
So who were some of the other, I guess, teachers or staff members, professors that helped mentor you while you were there?
So believe it or not, just show you how small the city is. At the time, I did not know Dr. Chase. And Dr. Chase, I was a business major, and Dr. Chase was the dean of business. Well, if you're familiar with New Orleans, you should know Leah Chase's restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the brand family here in New Orleans. And Dr. Chase is the son of Miss Leah Chase. And Dr. Chase, once he knew who I was, he kind of took me underneath his wing over there at Dillard University. And, now that I know the history, at the time I did not know that Black families, that's where we ate at, right? Yeah. Leah Chase was a big movement in the civil rights movement. Dr. King has eaten there. Presidents have eaten there. The Freedom Riders used to meet in a room on the second floor of the restaurant. And my grandfather used to take my dad and my aunt there every Friday, and they would eat. And they were very good friends with the Chase family. At the time, I did not know that. So Dr. Chase, and he was the dean of business, and actually we watched Zulu Mardi Gras Day at the Chase family restaurant. The king actually toasts still in front of the restaurant, even though Miss Leah Chase passed away several years ago. And every time he sees me, he pats me on the back and he says, "My steward, the contractor that's rocking and rolling here in the city of New Orleans." So, just shows you how dots connect.
Right. So when you graduated from Dillard, how did you begin your career in general contracting?
So I was working for my dad at the time. And believe it or not, I graduated the year before Hurricane Katrina, thank God. And after Katrina, we started, my dad kind of retired, and I kind of took over, and I started the company CDW Services and started rolling from there. We did a lot of debris pickup after Hurricane Katrina. We were just talking the other day. We did that for about 2.5, 3 years, which was debris pickup. Yeah. The city was devastated by the hurricane, and every home had to be gutted and thrown, trash thrown out. So it was 2.5, 3 years of debris pickup. Yep. And then the renovations kind of started from there. And
so you kind of got your start with doing renovations.
Absolutely. And that's, right now, we're probably one of the largest African-American commercial construction contractors here in the local area. I'm proud to say it, but I'm also sad to say it, right? In a city that's predominantly African-American, there should be more of us doing it.
Right.
There's probably one or two others, one in Baton Rouge, another firm that's kind of just starting here. Other than that, outside of us, that's it as far as commercial contractors.
Right.
And it's we found our niche. We found our niche in the commercial world. We're not too small. We're not that small where we compete against the guys that's in the $1 million range, and we have a little sweet spot about 10 million. We're too big for the small guys, and we're too small for the big guys.
Yeah.
So we found us a little sweet spot that we can kind of stay and run in, and it's been working for us.
So what type of projects are you all working on?
Right now, we're wrapping up a quadruplex baseball field for Plaquemines Parish government. Right now, we're doing an entire city block in Holly Grove. And actually, it's an African-American developer, which you don't find many of those around here either, for Paul Irons. And we're working for them for low-income housing. We just finished a library in Port Sulphur. We just finished the district attorney's office in Plaquemines. We just finished the council building. And one of my favorite projects of all time is McDonough 19. McDonough 19, if you're not familiar with it, it was integrated by 3 little girls, one of them by the name of Leona Tate. Believe it or not, they integrated the school a few blocks away in 15 minutes before Ruby Bridges integrated her school. And, in history, these three girls kind of get lost to Miss Ruby. And they endured the same things Miss Ruby did. And when Miss Leona tells the story, it brings chills to me and tears to my eyes. She was 6 years old. And she said she thought it was Mardi Gras Day. And when you see pictures, it's police on horses, it's a bunch of police all over, it's crowds all over the neutral grounds and on the sidewalks. She said, Chris, I really didn't know what was going on. I thought it was Mardi Gras Day. And as the three little girls went to school, escorted by the marshals, the federal marshals, they sat them in three chairs outside of the principal's office, which was near the exit of the school, the front entrance of the school. And everyone pulled their kids out of school that day and called them names, racial slurs. Those three girls went to that school by themselves for almost 2 years. There was a pharmacist in the area that decided to send his daughter there. And they threatened to burn his pharmacy down and threaten his family, so he ended up yanking his kid out. So they went to school by themselves for 2 years. And now Miss Leona Tate bought the school. Because of Katrina, the school board decided to sell some properties off because we didn't get the population back in certain areas. And she said, I cannot let this happen. I cannot sell this to a developer to do something, with it. I need to own the school. And she did. She bought it. She co-developed with another company, Olympic Group, and she bought the school. And the second and third floor, we made elderly low-income living. And on the first floor, she put her civil rights museum. And we up for all kind of national awards for that project. But I mean, when you talk about a feel-good story, when people ask you, do you like what you do?
Right.
And why do you like what you do? And it's moments and it's jobs like that really touches your heart. And what I loved about it, Miss Leona Tate said, Chris, I could not do this job without a Black contractor. And she made sure and put the effort that a Black contractor was involved. And gratefully, she chose us. And I mean, that's one of my number one projects.
Yeah, that's an amazing story as well. I want to ask you about your grandfather because he's the first generation in the industry within your family. So tell me about your grandfather and how he influenced you on your career path.
Well, my great grandfather was the first.
Your great grandfather, okay.
He was the first. Of course, I never met him.
Okay.
My grandfather was the second. My grandfather, he was, he was instrumental in my life. I spent a lot of time with him. My dad doesn't like fishing. He doesn't like hunting, but my grandfather was a big fisher. He was a big hunter. So we spent a lot of time together hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, I still hear it today. When I'm around the city and I introduce myself and people, in this city, everybody knows everybody. So they want to know, who's your parents? Right? I got asked that at Mardi Gras so many times. Elderly people stop them and they're like, who's your parents? What's their name? What's your last name? What's your name? And then when I tell them, it's amazing the good things you hear about them. And, people tell me, they're like, at the time, in the 60s, they said, your grandfather was the biggest Black contractor there was, residential. He was a residential guy. And in New Orleans East, which is a newer section of the city, my grandfather was very talented. He designed his own homes. I can't draw. He could draw. He would design his own homes, and he designed what he liked was Hawaiian tiki homes. And I tell people all the time, I say, if you ever was in a home in New Orleans East and you walked in and there was a bridge, as soon as you walk in the house and a pond underneath, I said that was his home. That was one of his signatures. And after Katrina, someone told me he built this home 30 years, 40 years ago. And he said, your grandfather was before his time. He said he designed this house. And even after Katrina, when times have changed and open floor plans, he was like, the house is we're still able to use without changing anything. Yeah. And, when you hear those stories and especially, I mean, look, I can only imagine what they dealt with in the 60s. And, in 70s. So it's to hit those things and the hurdles they went through and to still make it through. It's when times get rough for me, and times get rough for us all, that I look in the mirror and I'm like, if they did it,
Right.
you got to push through.
Right. Right.
So that's he was very instrumental in my career path.
And so what about your dad? So your dad is third generation, right?
That's correct. And he's actually still around today. He comes in. I mean, look, that's a book of knowledge that I can't. That's one thing I respect about, older people, is the book of knowledge, the experience.
Right. Right.
And, sometimes he tells me go left and I go right, and I get burnt. And he's like, I told you so.
Yeah.
And there's times he tells me go left and I go right, and I got to tell him, I told you so. And, one thing that I really appreciate with him is with parents of generational families and businesses, sometimes the parents get too controlling and they want to still have a pulse on kind of what you do. And, that's one thing I respect about my dad, is that he's never been controlling an aspect of the decisions I make in the business. He's never been hands-on the pulse of the decision making that I make. Now, I mean, he's very influential in the decisions I make, and I do go to that book of knowledge. But that's one thing I respect about him, having friends in other family businesses. How I see how the parents kind of interact, and he's kind of let me fly on my own.
Yeah.
Let me fly and let me fall on my own. And when I fall, he's there to pick me up.
Right. Right. So how has Dillard University, your experiences and your education there, how has that played a role in your success as a businessman?
Dillard, and I'm gonna give you a quick little history. My dad went to St. Augustine High School. My uncles went to St. Augustine High School. My brother went to St. Augustine High School. My older brother, so I thought I was going to St. Augustine. St. Augustine High School is the last all-black Catholic school in this country, I believe. And they used to paddle kids there. Just recently, it's ran by the Josephites. They got rid of the paddle maybe 8 years ago. It was a big deal. But I thought that's where I was going. We moved to Slidell, which is about 30 minutes outside of New Orleans. And I ended up going to a school that was all white. It was 350 students. At times throughout my 5 years there, from 8 to senior, there was times where I was only black in the school. And it was, look, I get along with everybody. And Slidell has its, when we talk about Dirty South, it has its underlying race conditions out there. And as black people, I tell people we have intuition. We feel things, we see things, we hear things, we feel things other people don't feel. And I remember my cousin at the time told me, I was very disappointed I was there, because I always thought I was going here. And then going to an all black school versus going to all white school is two sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, right.
And I remember my godfather telling me, he said, look, when you get in business, you're going to deal with more whites than you deal with blacks. And that's just the reality of it. He said, so enjoy yourself there, learn, and then when you graduate, go to HBCU. And that's exactly what I did. And Dillard was like being at home. It was like being with family. It was very comfortable. I mean, every one of the teachers, I never had an issue with any of the teachers. If you had a problem in class, you talked to them. They were willing to help. They were willing to go that extra mile to see you succeed. From the finance office to everyone that worked on that campus, to janitorial, to the maintenance guys. Everyone there wanted to see you succeed. And I think that's one thing I've taken in my business, is wanting to see other people succeed. Yeah. We do a great job. We do a great job of hitting 50%, 60%, 70%, and 100% DBE participation. Orleans Parish School and RSD had me speak one time at their public engagements, because we were hitting such high marks on our DB goals,
Yeah.
where other contractors couldn't get 20% or 15%. So I've kind of made it a mission to help people along the way, because if we're not helping people along the way, then why are we doing it?
Right.
And Dillard really instilled that in me. I mean, Dillard gave me a award a few years back, and when I spoke, I said, look, they say it takes a village to raise a child. And I said, and Dillard was my village.
Right, right. Now, you touched on something that's kind of near and dear to me as well. And, you know, when you're talking about DBE participation and how for a lot of companies, it seems to be very difficult for them to reach what sometimes seem to be very modest goals. What do you think the contributing factors are to many companies not being able to hit DBE goals? And because obviously diversity, equity, and inclusion is a big deal in the business world. I have my own opinions, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are about it as well.
Scared, not knowing, ignorance, right? They like to use excuses and say DBs cost more than other subcontractors. That's not necessarily true.
Right.
Different areas, and New Orleans is a little unique, right? One of the poorest cities in the country, one of the most uneducated cities in the country. And we don't have strong DBEs. One thing I was upset with Xavier University with is one of the largest construction firms, Woodward Construction in the area, teamed up with me. Xavier University was doing a $60 million dormitory, new construction. And I have friends over there at Woodward. They brought me in as a 30% equity partner, 35% equity partner. It's about a year ago. Mm-hmm. And that's huge for me, right? We're about a $17 million a year company. And, so that was huge for me. And Xavier came in second place. Xavier ended up awarding to somebody else. And I talked to a couple of the board members and I explained to them, I said, guys, you want inclusion. And when companies actually take the time to create inclusion, like we've been asking them for 400 years,
right,
then we have to reward them for it. Now, it's one thing if we weren't certified to do the job, right? But that was not the case.
Right.
And I'm like, we have to start rewarding these companies. We're missing the mark. I think that was one of the positive things about Floyd George, right? Was that companies started doing the outreach.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. They wanted the inclusion. And if we don't capitalize on it, then the movement was for nothing.
Right.
And I think that some companies, and I get it because I'm not a subcontractor, I'm a general contractor. We put up bonds. We need the projects to go right. If the projects go wrong, then our name is bad, right? So I understand one side of the contractors as far as sometimes how they feel. But then what I find with my DB subcontractors, it's not that they don't know the work. It's really financial capacity.
Yeah.
You start giving them larger jobs or you're trying to grow them, you're stretching them thin, and then it's paid when paid or paid if paid.
Right.
And you start stretching them a little thin. And I think these larger firms, they have the financial capacity to kind of come in and say, look, let us help fill those gaps.
Right.
How can we help fill those gaps? A lot of times it comes down to money, as far as the growth of these DB firms. And I think some of these contractors don't want to take the time or effort to want to extend that help to those subcontractors. It's easy for them to say, I told you so, it didn't work. Right. I told you so, it didn't work.
Hey, Chris, as we get ready to wrap the show up, I want you to take about 30 seconds and tell me why someone should choose Dillard University as their HBCU.
Why you should choose Dillard University HBCU. It's one of the distinguished universities around. It's not your big name brand like a Southern, Morehouse. But if you're looking for a tight-knit community, if you're looking for for people that's going to take you in and guide you on a path. Because believe it or not, those 4 or 5 years that you spend in college really changes the trajectory of your life.
Right.
Before you step in the real world. And Dillard University will grab you by the hand, walk you through, and mold you into being a good person, a good businessman, a good husband, a good wife. And for that reason, I would choose Dillard University.
Chris, I appreciate you being on the show. I don't think you could have summed it up any better. But what I want to do before we conclude the show, I want to present you with our HBCU Lifetime Achievement Award for your continued commitment to historically Black colleges and universities and to your success as a businessman and entrepreneur. I appreciate you being on the show and taking time out your busy schedule to share with my viewers your experiences. And to my viewers, I want to thank you for watching this episode of HBCU. I'm your host, Dee Brown CEO. And remember, without you, there's no me.